Would it have killed them to put up a beacon or something saying there was a minefield here? Ambassador Mover yelled over the panicking bridge crew, trying to assess the nightmare they found themselves in. It was supposed to have been a normal mission. Make official contact with humanity. It's not as if the apes didn't know about the galaxy at large. They have ever since the Gra first found them. Things had gone perfectly back then. The Gra were given a tour, and humanity was given the recipes for plasteel and durasteel. From that point on, it was the Uplift Bureau's problem. But that was over 20 cycles ago. The GC had been dragging its paws as per usual, and thus humanity was left to fester with the knowledge they weren't alone. It didn't help that Uplift Contamination Prevention, the UCP laws, existed to keep new arrivals from being abused until they could stand on the galactic stage proper. Perfectly reasonable, if the Bureau ever got around to doing its job. The Shassians had grown tired of waiting. They wanted to officially meet their newest, and more importantly, closest neighbour. After all, who was going to stop them? The Uplift Bureau? What were the humans like? How far had they spread? Do they like their roux fried or baked? Important questions, but so far all Mover had learned is that they don't announce where their minefields are.
Actually, ma'am, they did,
squeaked her very new comms officer, Ensign Jack. So new the Nightkin, sharp male, was still hiding under his terminal from where they hit the first mine, only now just poking his head out. She'd find it adorable if she didn't have so many reasons to be upset right now.
Oh, they did they? Then please tell me, Ensign Jack, as my communications officer, why did you not tell us any of this sooner? Why did we hit a mine? Why is there a hole reminiscent of a Zossian cat house's cheapest exotic in the side of my cousin's ship? She exclaimed, pointing her claw at the starboard viewing screen, where a jagged wound in the ship's right nacelle could be seen. Because, He shrank, black ears going flat atop his head. Because the beacon's broadcast is sub-FTL and rather weak, so it was indistinguishable from background noise outside of the system. Ma'am? Ugh! Gods damn it! She groaned, burying her face in her hands and sinking into her chair. She didn't want to yell at the new guy. He was cute and just doing his job. She was pretty sure he'd just graduated too. It had taken him a week to stop looking like he was going to wet himself if she gave him an order. He was only, 2 years her junior? And she was yelling at him for something he'd never been trained for. To be fair, they all could have died, but... Am I an awful person? Well, if it makes you feel any better... Jack started climbing out more from his hidey hole. My brother owns a repair bay on one of the old astro mining rigs. If we stop by, he can buff out those scratches before your cousin even notices, He caught himself. Ambassador. She looked up from her hands and just stared at the Nightkin a moment, momentarily stunned at the suggestion. Until it hit her. Oh my gods, you're serious? Ambassador Mover? He verbally nudged, ears drooping. Let's worry about that later, Ensign, she sighed, briefly pulling at her muzzle before sitting back up in her chair. Now, I'm going to say the thing, and if a single one of you brings up some ancient sci-fi meme, I will claw your face off. Got it? She threatened, squinting menacingly as she swept her gaze over the bridge crew. Status report. She saw a few fight the urge to make Starclaws references, but it was her gruffer plainskin engineering officer, Ensign Didi, who answered first. Other than some minor structural damage from the blast, all systems not in the nacelle are intact. Meaning? Meaning we have about 2/3 of our normal thrust and inertia control. 8 cabins are no longer safe to inhabit, and I wouldn't trust Reactor 3 until we got a proper dry talk team to look at her. The brown Shah said, tapping the depiction of the damaged systems on his screen. Ah, shit, my room was in theirs, mumbled a different crew member. Professionals. She was surrounded by professionals. All the crew were graduates, sure, but the discipline and maturity that came with experience were non-existent. All the experienced Shah and she, female, retired when the integration into the GC left the Shashin economy in shambles. Hell,
The oldest member of the crew was Dee Dee, and he was like 35.
Okay, that doesn't sound too bad. Science? Security?
A screen blinked on.
Nothing important is broken, ma'am. Everyone's just shaken up, reported Science Officer Fana.
Why do Snowkin's sciencey types always have to sound so calm and emotionless all the time? It's creepy. If anyone other than a Snowkin talked like that, you'd assume they were a serial killer. On his turn, Security Chief Yun's tall sunken ears flicked back faster than he could look up from his screen.
What? We're in unknown territory, our ship is limping, and we're surrounded by primitive-ass mines belonging to a species we know next to nothing about.
What do you want me to say? Space wizards took over the cargo bay too?
Thank you, Mr. Yun. Always a pleasure.
Mover groaned internally as the officer went back to messing with his terminal.
So,
she brought her white-tipped hands together in a sudden clap.
Any glorious ideas on how we get out of this mess? Anyone. Anyone at all.
Dee Dee, as always, had the realistic approach.
As is, meticulously charting a course through the minefield without setting any off is ideal. They're easy to see, but as we learned, they're magnetic, and there are thousands of them, moving in slow but predictable paths. It could take days to reach the nearest edge, but it's safe.
Can't we just shoot the damn things? Suggested Yun dismissively, an ear flicking towards Dee Dee in annoyance.
And risk a chain reaction? You saw what just one of those mines did to us, right? I can fix holes, sure, but I'd need a ship left to do that, Dee Dee countered. But by all means, kill us all if you get bored.
Get off my tail, it was just a suggestion, Yun growled back, before turning back to his terminal. Mover sighed and twiddled with her whiskers as her officers began to bicker. This was going to take a while.
Interrupted Ensign Jack. If I may?
Mover gave him a questioning trill.
We're in human space, right?
He asked sheepishly, tapping his claws on his terminal desk.
We could just ask them for help. I think they'd understand our situation. That, Mover started, is a terrible idea. It's bad enough most of the GC looks down on us for being new and predators and prone to violence, she air-quoted. We don't need the humans learning that their primitive-ass minds can actually hurt our ships. If they're reasonable, we want them to be our friends. If they're hostile, we want them to be intimidated. Asking them for help, like hyperlane bums, doesn't help that image. Or they could be super nice and helpful. You know, like the Zarmians or the...
He paused, only to shrink as a second race didn't come to mind.
Or the Zarmians,
he finished, putting on the awkwardest smile in the quadrant. Mover took a slow inhale, and slowly let it back out.
Ensign Jack, she said,
eyes closed in a moment of calm.
Yes, Ambassador? I wish for you to understand. Thoroughly understand. I'd lick you before I ever ask the humans, the people who we're trying to impress, for help. Got it? She asked,
though she didn't get the answer she expected. Her ear flicked towards a snicker from the bridge crew, and when she opened her eyes, she saw the poor Nightkin's ears burning.
Yes, ma'am,
he stammered, shrinking as far into his seat as he could go, which only earned more snickering from the bridge crew.
What? What's so funny? She asked,
upset that there was some kind of inside joke she wasn't in on, and confused as to what it could be. Ensign Fenner's screen flicked back on.
The crew has enacted the morally dubious and highly immature maritime tradition of betting on who the resident exotic and or morale officer will sink her claws into first, of which you were deemed to meet both requirements.
She glanced down at a tablet for a moment, eyes scanning the rapidly passing numbers reflected in her pale blue eyes.
Currently, the anonymously submitted team Ink of the Void is estimated to win.
Bah! What? She faltered, trying to process a few too many emotions at once until incredulity won out.
Wait a second. Are you the one hosting the bet?
There was a long pause from the science officer as she guiltily glanced down at her tablet a few more times.
No? I don't like how long that no took. Just 'cause I'm pink doesn't mean you get to bet on who I sleep with. Also, I'm not a morale officer. That's a stereotype, and all you degenerate claw draggers know it.
She was indeed an exotic or oddkin, as old people called them. The name for anybody who significantly deviated from the usual Shashian phenotypes. In Mova's case, her fur was pink, but not pure pink. She had white on the tips of her ears, hands, paws, and tail. But promiscuous stereotypes associated with exotics stuck nonetheless. Her extensive romantic history in high school and uni didn't help that, but still, she was going to be upset about it.
What? Is the new guy not good enough for you either?
One of the ever-capricious crew called. She glanced back to the shrinking Jack.
I mean, he's cute, fucking adorable even, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna... Called it!
Another yell from the back, earning some whistles from her crew and the burning of her ears.
Why does she have to say that?
She thought, before she decided to put her paw down on the issue.
Oh, shut up! I'm ordering all of you to drop this and get us out of here before I send you outside to kick the mines out of the way. Yes, ma'am,
the yawl answered, stifling the humour being had at her expense. Mova could only sulk into her chair and squint at the degenerates.
I hate all of you. It's been 3 days!
Mova bemoaned for the 7th time that day, sinking lower into her prominent seat. 3 days spent torn between boredom and impending doom. 3 days of tedious manoeuvring around these damned mines. The engineers were still doing repairs. The science team was busy trying to throw together some kind of repulsor thing to push the mines away, preferably without inventing a whole new field of science in the process. And security? They've been playing Baptal in the cargo bay.
Alright, I'm going to say it. Starclaw's made this job look way more fun, she said,
throwing her white-tipped hands up, exasperated. This earned her a few disappointed agreements from the remaining bridge crew. She'd officially entered full shrimp mode, sinking so far into the seat as to curl up until her legs and tail were higher than her arms and head. Posture be damned.
Fuck me,
she whined aloud from the bottom of her soul, wishing she brought games for the captain's console.
Ma'am?
Mova trilled, before scrambling to sit up and look important.
What? Who? Oh.
She deflated a bit, seeing it was just Ensign Jack looking up from his post.
No, Jack, that wasn't an invitation. Nobody is winning that bet, she huffed.
Jack's ears flattened a bit.
I know that, but that's not what I wanted to tell you.
He glanced back at his terminal.
We're receiving a tight beam communication from outside the minefield. I thought you'd want to know. What? How? Who came for us? Nobody should be looking for us for another 2 weeks. I don't know, ma'am, but someone is calling us, in our coding language, and I can't find them anywhere,
he answered nervously, looking over the beeping scanners and arrays displayed at his station. Well, that made it worse. They knew enough Shasian programming and ship anatomy to send a readable type beam, and they could hide from sensors? She highly doubted it was voidling pirates. They never left Shashian space, so who could it be?
Okay, put them on. Everyone else keep doing what you're doing or pretend to be doing something important. I have ambassadoring to do,
she ordered, looking at all the crew who had been busy staring.
Yes, ma'am,
they acknowledged, all focusing on their terminals. The main screen came to life, and what she wasn't the Shasian she'd been expecting, but a blonde human male. Eyes as blue as a snowkin's, and exposed fangs wide and made for tearing. He was reclined in a patchy pilot seat, in what she assumed to be a ship's bridge. It looked cramped, with a ceiling low enough Mova's ears would scrape against the top if she stood up straight. And were those fuzzy dice hanging near him? Hey, you picked up! I was starting to think you guys got decompressed, he greeted jovially, with such jarringly fluent Shasian that it stunned her for a second.
This is Ambassador Mova of the Shasian territories. Yes, we're quite alive. Might I ask who you are and if you might be the owner of this minefield?
Me? You can call me Noah. Most do. And no, these are old. Older than me. The guys that placed them are probably dead or senile by now.
So your people just left a bunch of old mines floating around out here?
My people? No. These are leftovers from when Libertalia and Ancapistan's last lovers' quarrel. And neither side is very keen on cleaning it up, because that would have mean admitting the other side was right. He explained, rolling his eyes the same way you would, thinking of how much one of your friends argues with his mate. Annoying, concerning, but what can you do? The data the Gra gathered did mention humanity was still a splintered species. Dozens of factions vying for supremacy within their fields of influence. Seems not much has changed since then.
I hate to ask this of a potential rescuer, but I'd be remiss in my duties as an ambassador if I didn't ask which of the human factions you belong to, Noah.
None in particular. Just me, myself, and I. He tapped his fingers together, visibly pondering for a second. Well, actually there is one, but they could give less of a shit whether I helped you or not. Now, if you got blown up and I plundered the wreckage, then they'd be pissed. Treading on the Scavenger Guild's turf and all, but you're very much alive, so that won't be an issue. She didn't recall any of the known factions being listed as a guild of sorts, but those were just the official entities. There were other, less than legitimate entities the Shashin government knew about, but nobody else needed to know that.
When you say guild, you mean?
She asked leadingly. The guild, he clarified, with an unfortunately knowing nod, seeming all the happier. Am I in the presence of an esteemed customer?
You're a smuggler, aren't you? She said aloud,
earning many perk tiers from her crew. It wasn't accusatory, more a realization. It explained everything. The Gra may have found humanity, but the Shasians were the first people humanity found. They were their closest galactic neighbor, so it was only a matter of time before they crossed paths with one another. I like to put free-range entrepreneur on my business cards, but call me whatever you like. And he seemed to be a prime example of one. Once humanity's criminal elements cut the trip time to Selafor down to 2 warp weeks, they came in droves, with arms wide and pockets deep. Humanity had become the source of all the latest drugs, weapons, and foodstuffs to hit the GC at large. Is that a problem? He asked, raising a brow of what she assumed was suspicion.
Not in the slightest, was the correct answer,
the diplomatic answer, and the answer that would keep her in this human's good graces long enough to be saved.
I do believe it is well within my ambassadorial privileges to arrange a cultural exchange of gifts with you, if desired. After being saved from our predicament, that is.
It was a great loophole in the anti-contamination laws. People weren't allowed to do business with the unintegrated, but made a poorly worded exception for the cultural exchange of gifts. He seemed a little surprised at that. Oh, I had intended to rescue you guys for free, but...
Ah, shit!
She screamed internally, having realized she just put a price tag on being rescued before being rescued. Humans didn't take credits. They were worthless until they were integrated into the GC, so they bartered for everything. She knew there was only one thing the humans always wanted, and it made her wonder. How much tech would be required to save everyone aboard? But I'm not opposed to you browsing my collections afterwards. There's only one thing I want in exchange, he continued.
Here it comes. And that is?
She asked tentatively. I was never here, he answered, pointing both index fingers down to the floor and wearing a bright smile. If anyone asks, you escaped on your own. If they ask how, tell them you EMP'd the mines or something.
Oh, that's not so bad, she sighed with relief. Plus, that's a pretty believable story too. We can actually do that,
she burst, quickly looking over to where the screen her science officer usually appeared on. Only for her to appear, shrug, and vanish again. Well, no. They're old, but not that old. They've been EMP shielded for decades.
Then how are you going to get us out of here? She asked,
suppressing the incredulity that rose within her. There's a trick for dealing with dumb magnet mines like these. I'll give it 3, maybe 4 passes to peel enough away, he said, sounding more like he was thinking aloud than anything else. He wasn't even looking at the camera anymore, already filling with various buttons and switches she could only guess the purposes of. Ensign Jack looked up from his post.
I found him, Ambassador. He kinda just appeared outside the minefield. You can probably see him out the window, he explained,
patching up a visual feed to her terminal. Squinting, she saw a portion of space shimmer before fracturing into little hexagons of light. Then colours swept over the shape like a rippling wave, revealing the admittedly small vessel. If she squinted hard enough, it looked like a light cargo hauler, wearing the armour/skin of a corvette it killed. Not to mention the secondary cloak-like layer of hexagonal panels, and copious radiators emitting their orange glow from the vessel. Despite the primitive hot fusion power systems requiring those radiators, the rest would be impressive technological leaps for humanity. If Mova didn't have a good guess as to where he got it all from. The smugglers usually got first pick of the technological marvels they acquired, often taking things that make their job easier.
What do you mean by peel-off layers? She asked, with slowly growing concern.
You know, like an onion, he answered, quite distracted by the controls he was manipulating. Now hold still and try not to die. Oh, there's my freebird shard.
What do you mean try not to die? What are you doing? The fuck's an onion?
These were important questions, but they were all she got out before the call cut out.
Ma'am, the other ship is engaging thrusters. He's going straight for the minefield,
Ensign Didi announced.
He's what?
Mova yelled, turning to a head engineer.
What do you mean he's going straight for the minefield? We're still in here.
I think he's aware of that, ma'am. Ensign Didi looked back to the screen, ears twitching as he noticed something. He's altering trajectory and bringing himself parallel with the edge of the minefield. The outermost mines are already starting to float towards him. Jack didn't seem too thrilled by that detail. So, in a display of grand bravery, he hid under his console like it would somehow save him from a warhead chain detonation.
Oh gods, he's gonna kill us all. I knew the humans were crazy. I don't want to die single. My brothers will make fun of me, he cried out.
Update your dating profile later, Jack, Mova scolded, justifiably not in the mood to tease the poor guy. She still wanted to see what was going on, though, and that was his department. She'd give him 3 seconds of calm in the storm if needed. Taking a deep breath, she put on her gentler, reasonable voice. Ensign Jack, will you please stop wetting your pants long enough to point our visual feedback at the human ship again? Maybe keep it locked on him if you will be so brave? Jack peered out from under the desk, just far enough to see his terminal, before hitting the right buttons to do as she ordered.
Yes, Captain. Ambassador. Ma'am.
A very brave Shah indeed. She didn't want to believe it, but she was looking right at it. The human vessel was skimming along the very edge of the minefield. He'd gone to the edge of visual range just to turn back around, and threaded even closer and faster. When he passed the second time, the outermost mines began to float outwards towards the ship, but unable to catch up in the brief moment the vessel was there. With the third pass came an even greater number of the mines tumbling out into open space, but this time in enough number to cause a line of small explosions behind the ship in passing.
She has voluminous tits! He's flying faster than the mines can explode,
Mova pointed out, watching the scene like a military-grade fireworks display. He's also using the mine's passive magnetism to lure them away so they can't chain react all at once, Didi added. The heads of the entire crew followed back and forth as the ship peeled away layer after layer of the mines. Days of careful navigation stripped away with each pass. 4 passes in, and the silent explosions in the void were getting close enough that the high-energy dust was peppering the ship. To Mova's ears, it sounded like waves of grainy rain on the hull. A final layer of mines was peeled away and disappeared in a series of explosions, too close for anyone's comfort, but...
There's an opening. Get us through there before it closes.
Not needing to be told twice, the ship lurched towards the opening at full burn. Mova and the crew clung to their seats for dear life, waiting for the untimely explosion that would kill them all. But in the longest 7 seconds of their lives, nothing happened.
Are we alive? Ensign Jack asked, peering out from under his station, tentatively looking around, and his ears flicking about. I think so, Mover answered, followed by a moment of stunned silence. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. The crew erupted into cheer, embracing their nearest peers or sinking down in their seats in relief. Thank the gods! Mover let the 3 days of stress vent as she sank back down into her chair again. They weren't dead. It's all she had ever asked for, and Noah had delivered. Her mission was, for all intents and purposes, a failure, since they could no longer deliver the perfect first impression with a severely damaged vessel, but on the bright side, they were alive. Ensign Jack, she called down to the comms officer. She just spotted emerging from under his post. It may have startled the guy into jumping and flailing a bit, but he was quick to compose himself. Yes, Ambassador, he answered. Would you be so kind as to re-establish the tight beam with our newfound saviour? I do believe some shopping is in order. Can do, ma'am, he answered, seemingly as relieved as everyone else. And by the gods, he didn't stutter for once. But before you do... He just turned back to his terminal when it was his turn to make the confused trill. Glancing back. Put out a shipwide alert that anyone wanting to show their appreciation should bring any items of technological nature from their personal effects to the shuttle bay. Spare assistants, tablets, drones, etc. Also, after you send it, delete it and any history of that announcement from the system. Also delete that I ever gave that order to delete it. Got it? She added, with a night playful tilt of her head and suggestive wiggle of her ears. But wouldn't that be against regulation? Oh, now I get it. He wiggled his ears back, catching on. Good. Did you catch any of that, Mr. Yun? She questioned, looking to the security officer. His job was to be a narc, after all. What? I can't hear you. The explosions must have blinded me. Are you sure you want me to get too wasted to file a report tonight? If you say so, he answered, with an equally playful wiggle of his notoriously tall and effective sunken ears. Close enough. Kindness of your heart, huh? Ambassador Mover questioned, as she stood alongside Noah, surveying the crew browsing the gifts the human had shuttled over for them to peruse. I may have been a wee bit financially motivated, he said offhandedly with a nod, leaning back against a pair of stacked crates. Not wanting to interrupt the conversation, whenever a crew member came up wanting to offer an exchange, he'd give a nod for good enough or a shake for no/renegotiate. The human capacity for body language, despite the lack of a tail or ears, was still impressive. Sorry you found out our front lawn has landmines on it. We'll be sure to fly around then next time. Mover chuckled a bit, though it ended with a bit of a sigh. If there is a next time, I don't think the governing tribes are going to be happy we had to turn around just to keep up appearances. They're the ones who set up that requirement. Not your fault you stumbled face first into our old disputes. It does sound like a hot mess the way you described it, she agreed, nodding a little as she watched tablets and personal appliances get traded for human-made kinetic pistols and live xenofish. She liked the stripy one with all the quills and ribbons. Noah could only shrug. What can you do? Far as I've seen, the rest of the galaxy isn't much better. While our corps are having small-scale wars over wage slaves, yours are sucking the life out of any economy smaller than theirs. While our worlds fight over who owns what system, you have stellar empires duking it out over... what? Their ability to vote in your totally not corrupt Senate? And while our people can't pick a single form of government, the rest of the galaxy just pretends the whole species peacefully agreed to theirs. Yeah, it isn't pretty, Mover sighed. But in some weird way, it's oddly entertaining to watch the parts not immediately affecting you. Like, are the Hivers and the Prosperity League gonna fight again? It won't affect our little corner of the GC, but it'll sure be entertaining to watch. Hey, everyone loves a good dumpster fire. What does it matter if it's your dumpster? True, though speaking of dumpster fires... Her eyes and ears flicked over to the general direction of Ensign Jack. The Night Kim was busy gawking at the fish with kitten-like fascination, face pressed against the glass. I might be seeking some unofficial advice during our unofficial interaction, if you don't mind unofficially providing it, she led on. He smuggled. I might, though I'd be wiggling my cat ears in a very knowing manner right now if I had them like you guys. In lieu of ears, he wiggles his eyebrows instead. She inhaled and decided to just let the problem out, though in the best human English she could manage, so the crew wouldn't understand. My crew, being the degenerates they are, have a betting pool going for who among them I'm going to hit on. Because you're an exotic? In a species hardwired to be attracted to genetic diversity? Thus forming a cultural paradigm in that all exotics know they're attractive, and using that knowledge to promiscuously advance their personal goals, be they politically motivated or otherwise? I was just going to say they think I'm a slut, but I like your answer better. She paused, stunned at the depth of Shassian culture he knew. How do you know all that anyways? I watch a lot of your TV when I'm on Salifor. Ah, that'll do it. She really needed to consider doing that to gather information if she ever reached human space. She started asking for help, but it derailed into an awkward silence from the feline ambassador. I'll trade you a map of the GC hyperlane network if you give me an updated map of humanity's current claims. She broke the silence, trying to get the ball rolling again. Coaxed herself into asking for the aid she needed. Deal, he nodded. Yes! Mova fist-pumped. Unfortunately, prematurely. But, she replied, with a small sense of social dread in her gut. Only if you finish telling me your actual problem. Ah, fine. She both did and didn't want to talk about this, but she had nowhere else to turn. Plus, the part of her that wanted the help had held dominance long enough to ask for the help. She needed to follow through. I don't want to prove my crew right, but I also may have said I'd lick Ensign Jack over there, and that I'd do so before I'd ever ask humanity for help. But here we are, she admitted, tapping her claw tips together awkwardly. Noah followed Mova's gaze to the Nightkin. The one over by the tanks? Ogling the catfish like it's his wish-granting ancestor or something? Yeah, that's him. She face-palmed. Of all times, Jack had to look like a goober right now. You appear to be suffering from an acute case of conflicting interests. It would be a shame if I had a super easy solution for your problem now that you've asked a human for help twice now. Must really want to lick the guy. He nods smugly. I say this in a very unofficial capacity, but fuck you, she squinted, only to get a chuckle out of Noah. What was the Shassian saying for those attracted to Nightkin? That you like to play with ink? He continued, toying with her for a bit. How Shassian of him. Her fur stood up a little, and an indignant growl leapt up to her throat. Please don't make me the first ambassador in galactic history to bap the shit out of a human. He smugly smirked all the harder, seeming proud of himself. Look, I'll give you this one for free, as I love Shassian romance dramas, and this is very entertaining for me, he said, almost seeming a tad giddy, if she was reading the expression right. If you don't lick him, you'll prove your crew wrong, but make yourself a liar in the process. If you do lick him, you won't be a liar, but your crew will be proved right. Said rightness is only in their minds, but they're still making a lot of money off exotic stereotypes. So what do? That's what I'm asking you. Easy. Cheat. Mova blinked and trilled. Anyone can place a bet, right? He shrugged. Just place an obscenely large bet on Jack, and then lick him like you want to force the outcome. I'm sure you'll feel all kinds of better about the crew making fun of you when you're dabbing your tears with their 100-credit bills. That? She raised her hand, as if to make a point, but it's a fucking great idea, she said, whipping out her tablet and going to the ship's internal forum to submit her own bet. And done. 10k on Jack, which is a little over half the betting pool, meaning the house gets nothing. Fuck you too, Fenner. She grinned with a sudden urge to giggle, and in a very unabashedly evil manner. Glad to be of service, he grinned back. Want my help rigging the Crew of the Month election next? Not yet. I'll be right back. There was just one last thing she needed to take care of, and she went straight for it. It was a matter of exotic honor, after all. Ensign Jack? Yes, ma'am.
He turned, though he bore the expression of a kitten about to get yelled at.
If this is about my whole we're all gonna die thing, I knew that wasn't proper command staff behaviour. I expected to be reprimanded eventually, but hold still for me, would you?
She asked, locking eyes with him.
Okay, but what about you're getting licked?
His eyes widened and he tensed. Before he could finish, he grabbed both sides of his head, turned it, and licked him. Not just any lick, but a big, long lick to prove she wasn't giving the bare minimum to get out of it. And he was cute. Especially as her tongue travelled from his jaw, over his cheek, and up the rim of his now burning ear. Whether the redness was from the blatant PDA, the cheering/swearing of the crew, or the lick itself, remained to be seen. She hoped it was the latter of the three, but couldn't blame him for the former.
And now nobody can call me a liar,
she stated with confidence, pulling back enough to see his adorably stunned face and jaw on the floor.
Jack, you alive in there?
The best she got from him was a little headshake and a flustered muttering.
Patron spirits, a she actually licked me.
Jack64.exe could not respond. He wouldn't be responding for a long time.